The WNBA and the WNBPA have agreed to extend the current collective bargaining agreement through January 9th now of 2026, that per Ramona Shelburne. Now, either party, though, this is important, either party has the option to terminate the extension with 48 hours advance notice. So, Caroline, it's like they're saying, hey, we're going to extend this thing out to January unless we get really angry, in which case with 2 days notice, we can tell you just to screw off.
Yeah, and that's when we would enter, or this is kind of entering a period of status quo, which is not unprecedented. We've seen this before in the previous CBA negotiations, which is the current CBA that they're playing under right now. It was originally, the deadline was originally in the fall, and they ultimately ended up extending until January. So this isn't like, oh my gosh, panic time. Why aren't they coming to these agreements? This has happened in the past. We've seen this before in CBA negotiations. But I think that getting it right, and we talked about this on Hoops 360 with Ari Chambers from ESPN, who does such a wonderful and fabulous job covering the WNBA and women's sports as a whole. She said it best when she said they need to get it done right, not get it done fast. This is the most pivotal time in the history of the WNBA. This is the most critical time for players in the WNBA to get what they feel like they deserve. The value of WNBA franchises has absolutely skyrocketed year over year. Just for context, Mark Davis bought the Las Vegas Aces for $2 million, million with an M. Now the Las Vegas Aces are worth a billion times that. And the Las Vegas Aces are probably the richest franchise in the WNBA. I mean, year over year, over 1 year, the Golden State Valkyries 10x'd their value from the expansion fee to what they're worth right now per Front Office Sports. So the league is richer than it has ever been in terms of value. The players want a part of that. They deserve a part of that. They shouldn't get anything less than what they feel like they deserve. So I think both sides, the players and the league, just want to protect themselves. They want to continue to grow, they want to continue to build, but they also want to protect their investments on both sides. So I think getting it done correctly, not getting it done fast or done by a certain deadline that you set for yourself, is the right approach.
The hardest part about all of this is when you've been in sports media for a minute, you end up covering lockouts or threatened lockouts and CBAs quite a bit. So I feel like while we haven't necessarily had to go down this path a bunch with the W, we have across sports. And the one thing that always gets stuck in my head when we talk about it is that at the end of the day, what you have are billionaires negotiating typically with millionaires, right? Like that's at the core. If we're going to have a game of chicken here in a game of negotiations, every single team owner is part of either by themselves or part of a conglomerate that's worth billions of dollars. And they're negotiating against players that at best are worth millions of dollars. And when you get into that situation where it gets so difficult is who can afford to wait longer through a negotiation? The answer to that is usually the owners because they just have more money, which is why at the end of the day, as much as these things get complicated, really they're not that complicated. At the end of all of it, leagues get more of what they want. It's just how they negotiate their way to it. Now, with the one sticking point here being that the players want a percentage, not a flat cap. They want everything to be tied in, just as we've said on the show many times, like every other major sports has. So they just want the same standard that every other major sport has. And I get that. But how do you force billionaire owners to do that when they may just not want to? They may just choose that they don't want to be a part of that. I think that's the most interesting part of this because pride is the downfall of man and woman in this case. So at some point, you got to decide how much fight am I willing to have, Caroline? Because if the answer to this is we won't sign anything that has a flat number on it, if that's what the players are saying, I believe the players will lose. I do not believe that the players can get the entire league to change, even though I think they're right. Even I think what they want is important. At the end of the day, if that's the only sticking point in this, there's just not enough counter negotiation to any of it. The owners can beat the players in this because, frankly, they have more money, they have more patience, they have more time. They don't need it as much. All of these things stacked together make for bad negotiations.
And I hear you on, the owners aren't going to budge on anything that they don't want to. They're not going to negotiate anything that they don't want to. I agree with you on that. I mean, they're smart business people. That's why they're billionaires. But what the extension of the CBA negotiation period tells me is that they want to. Like, they want to come to a resolution. If these two sides were so far apart from reaching a resolution, then we wouldn't have an extension. We would just have already, had a lockout. If it was that contentious, then I don't think that both sides would be willing to say, okay, we are going to negotiate until the nth hour, which is what they did. They went right up until midnight on November 30th, negotiating these terms. And then they extended it in good faith, understanding that both sides wanted to reach a resolution. It doesn't seem from the outside looking in, and from any reports that from anybody that's been covering this, is that it's gotten so contentious that both sides just want to separate and not even continue negotiating. Now, what you see right there, that's the latest proposal. This was reported by ESPN. The latest proposal, which was not approved by their Players Association, but we're getting some at least more legitimate in numbers that we can kind of point to say, okay, this is where, the league is starting to bend or break, or the players are starting to bend or break. The league's latest proposal, the max salary would be guaranteed $1 million base, but the revenue share would push earnings to a max of $1.2 million. So that's where the revenue share is coming from, that you're kind of seeing from this proposal, at least, a split of a max of 1 million in base, and that would be guaranteed. And then the bonuses from that would be from the revenue share. Now, obviously, that was not approved upon from the players, but it does show to me that both sides are at least starting to come closer and closer together. What the players want is revenue share. I don't blame them for that. They want to continue to grow with the league. But what the league is saying, and individual owners are saying, is, look, we got to get a profit too. It's not WNBA.gov. Like, we have to make money as well. We can't promise you a certain amount, or we can't promise you a certain percentage when we don't know what our finances are going to look like 5 to 10 years down the line. I understand that perspective from the owners. What the owners are really pushing for as well is prioritization, which is just a fancy word of saying, we want you to prioritize the WNBA over everything else. If you're playing overseas, if you're playing in Unrivaled, and you are getting injured, you're getting exhausted, you're exhausting your body in these other leagues, I can't pay you $1 million. So I see both sides and both perspectives of the players wanting to get a share of the value that they are creating for the league, but also the owners saying, look, we'll pay you more money, but we have to make sure that we are getting 100% from you, and it's not being split across Project B, Athletes Unlimited, Unrivaled, so on and so forth.
But again, that's where everything comes back to money at some point. Like, as I've said before, and will continue to echo, the only way the players, I think, ever have power in this situation is if they take the ball and they leave. And the players say, hey, we'll go play somewhere else. Like, if the W really had to worry about that, that could create some sort of, counter process in this. Because right now the W feels like they're negotiating everything from a position of power, right? Also, where this is so different than most leagues is how many of these teams, as we've talked about before, are owned by NBA owners, right? So it's not even like this is their only sports business. Even the Aces, while not owned by an NBA ownership group, Mark Davis certainly has other irons in the fire. He has other ways that he makes money in sports. So it's so different than how we perceive the negotiations with Jerry Jones and the negotiations of the NFL. And that's what's hard about this is, I think, again, what the women of the WNBA PA want is the right thing. And frankly, there's a very easy solution to this that nobody wants, which is just open up all the books very transparently, put all the accounting on the table, let an independent financial company come in as arbiters, look at the books and decide what's real from revenue, what's actual loss, what's written off loss, what's business loss, find out what the actual numbers look like, and from that come up with the defined percentage. That's a really easy solution, but that would take mediation from somebody because neither side seems to really want that to happen. So like, to me, that's why I keep getting lost in this, Carolina, is because I don't think there's an easy solution. And if the one thing that they can't come to terms on is whether or not it's a flat number or it's a percentage, there's no wiggle room in that. One side has to be willing to be publicly wrong in what they got. One side has to be publicly willing to stand up when this is all said and done and say, well, we didn't get that, but we got, and that's just that's a lot of pride. That's a lot of ego. That's a lot of money. It's a big difference in the process for me.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know if it is public knowledge if they're using independent arbiters or not. Um, I think what the latest proposal showed me is that the league is trying to do a little bit of both. We will give you a maximum guaranteed salary, and then revenue share will be out tacked on top of that. What did the players what not like about that proposal? I don't know. We don't know that. I would assume that they want a larger share of the revenue. That's just what I would assume. I don't know. We don't know. I don't think that we'll ever get a peek in the books, at least not in the near future, of WNBA finances. They want that private on purpose, which makes these negotiations, a little mucky from the outside looking in.